Good evening, I'm Sayubala and this is Saket Kuna. We're both sophomores doing the project programming category.
So here's our application. It's an all-in-one doer. Anything you want to do, you can organize it here. We have three main sections. The first one is the time schedule. These are just a notes section in which you can write anything, delete anything you want, and basically anything you want to write it down. It basically helps you keep track of everything, keep efficient notes, and makes everything easier. And as a display, we just put some random schedule we found or we made. But you can edit it, type anything you want. Yeah. And our next section is the principal part of our program, our to-do list. So what our to-do list does is it basically keeps track of all the tasks you want to do. And our time tracker is our last part. Our time tracker, well, honestly, a to-do list is kind of useless if you can't manipulate it more. So our time tracker allows you to do that. It basically keeps track of how much time you spend on tasks and helps you better manage your time. Sai will demonstrate how all of this works.
Here we have the to-do list part. We can enter a task. Let's say if you want to do chemistry homework, we just say chem homework, and we can click this plus button. And when we click on it, it appears over here. We can also keep inputting other stuff. So we can like say like fix computer, and we click on the plus button, it comes up. So yeah, so that it comes up in this area, and there's this other function where if you click on the check mark, it crosses through everything on here, and if you click on the trash button, it deletes and it goes to trash. So let's say you have a bunch of tasks, right? What you can do is there's also a scroll feature, so everything's organized in this one place, so you still have everything. Okay, so now we'll show you the time tracker part. Let's say I have a task to eat, and then, okay, not eat, let's say homework again. And I press enter, and now you can press start. So when you press start, it says timer has started. Okay, and now if we wait a few seconds, and then after that, however long you wanna, like you're doing your homework, and you press end, it shows you how much time you spent on it. It says 0 minutes and 11 seconds. You can add as many tasks as you want, and there's also a scroll feature so it all stays organized in this one area, and you can really track how much time you spend on everything. Now we'll show you the code behind how this all works. Okay, so here we have, in the code section, we have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So in the HTML section, I'm going to explain my part, which is the to-do section. So basically, I made a container that contains everything, and then we have a pig container, and then we have a list, and then your to-dos. So what this basically does is this is basically saying when you click on the add button, which is that icon, it lets off this function go in JavaScript, which I'll explain later. And then yeah, that's the button section. And here we have input text, your to-dos, so you can enter whatever you want to do. And then we get what's all connected to JavaScript right here. And then we also have the schedule part right here, which you can manipulate by just typing in on the application. So this is Saket's part.
I was responsible for the timer, and I'll explain it here. So principally, I created a div for the timer because we need something to store it in. It makes it much easier to store everything, change anything you want, and it's just universal. I created a title, the time tracker, and I made two forms of input. So the button itself that you click, which is right here, input type equals button, and the text box where you type in the task you want to do, which is here, input type equals text, ID equals timer input. And we gave everything an ID and a class if we want to access it in CSS later. And that's pretty much it for the HTML code. This is the most important part of our project because it lays the fundamental part for everything that comes afterwards. We can't do JavaScript or CSS if we don't have the HTML.
Now we go to the design.css. The design.css doesn't do all the connection part and how you can store everything or how you can enter everything, but it's really vital so everything looks really good and the user interface looks really good. So we just gave everything a certain amount of width, height, position, margin, and how it would look. So like for example, if we go into the main container, we made everything absolute, so everything stays in the center, and with the height is 46 pc, 26 width is 26 pc, and the margin's auto, so it centers out. And the box shadow is 55 pixels, so there's like a shadow like a figure around the main container, so everything just looks good. So this is we just like we just tuned it for every single one of the things. There's also this hover thing, hover function. So like when you hover over the task, it scales up. So it's like a pop-up function. And then we have the above schedule, time tasks, time input. So we just configured everything. So it gives it that look. And then now we're gonna go to the nitty-gritty section, the JavaScript part.
Now we have a lot of factors in our JavaScript code, and if I were to explain it line by line, we'd be here all day. So I'm going to simplify things to a certain extent, but I'll make sure that everything is explained thoroughly. So first of all, we need to access the HTML elements if you want to do anything with them. And so we did the timer section first. And so to access all the elements, so the time div, which is the div I created to organize everything, the time button, the start and end, and the time input. And we stored them all in variables in these first 3 lines here. Now, if you want to do anything in your JavaScript code, you need to, like, say, click on it, press enter, etc. You need an event listener, and we did that here. So what this does is time input listens for an event. If any key is pressed, go into this function and run it. And we want to run it only when you press enter, because this function displays your task. So what we did was, if event.keycode equals 13, then do all of this. Event.keycode is basically saying if the button clicked if its key code is 13, then do that. So every key in your computer has a code that you can access in JavaScript, and enter's key code happens to be 13. So we're saying if the button pressed is enter, run all this code. So to overly simplify this code, what I did was I created a div to store what I'm going to put in. So the task. I created a task element, which is an H5 tag. So it basically formats the text for you and makes it easier to categorize. And we need something to go inside that. So I created a text node and I stored what we actually wrote, timeinput.value, inside of it. And then in this line, I did task element.append child that puts the text in there. Task div.append child task element that puts the task element inside the task division that I created up here. And then finally, to display everything, time div.append child, which displays everything on the screen. And that's it for the input part. The next part was slightly more complicated, and that's the button. So what I did was another event listener, time button.add event listener, click. When I click it, run start click, the function that I made here. And so to track which way is end and which way is start, I did the number of times clicked. If it's odd, then it means you're starting it. If it's even, it means you're ending it. So let's go through the end part. So end part, what it does is it gets the time of both locations when you clicked it and when you ended it. And it subtracts those 2 times and displays it in a minute/second format. And it changes it to start. That's what this code does. And if it's odd, which means just starting it, it tells you that the timer has started. It gets the start time and the start minutes, and it starts the timer. That's it for the timer part. And this is the date. The date, what it does is it shows the date, and it basically creates a date object that updates each and every day. And that's it for the timer and the date. Now, this is the principal part of the program, the to-do list. Sai is explaining this part.
Okay, so this section is much easier than, or this section was much easier to code than what Socket did. So basically, it was all connected in HTML before. So if we go to HTML, it says add text. Oh, sorry, add button. When that button was clicked, it ran a function called add element in JavaScript. So here first I defined what elements was, just an array, and then onload. Onload basically means whenever the website just comes up, it runs this function. It goes through all the elements that was stored in elements, and it displays it. So what I mean is that, let's say if we go to the function here, basically when we reload, if there's anything stored locally, then it appears. So since these 2 values were stored locally, then it appears because it was stored in elements right here. That's what this does. Elements equals JSON.parse. It just goes through elements and appears it. So add element basically. So here we have no blank space. So if there's any blank spaces, it deletes all that blank space. And then here we have add text. Whenever you click on add text, it runs that, and then you can actually display it when it says here. And we actually defined what display was. So display basically means it goes through all the events that we had stored and just displays it. So function delete.index is, so for every object that you add, it's given like a certain number, and then whenever you want to delete it, you just it runs that function, so it just deletes that certain specific number, and you can display it. And the same thing with the strike. So now we're going to get into the next portion of the presentation. So now we're going to go through the skills that we learned and applied in this project.
Any project that we embark on is a learning experience for everyone involved, and this was an extremely difficult yet extremely useful learning experience for both of us. So many things we learned was basically, before we started this, we had little to no experience in JavaScript, HTML, or CSS. So we learned many important principles such as the DOM object in JavaScript, which makes you access your HTML code, all of CSS, and everything in HTML. And this is extremely good for us because learning this would make it possible for us to embark on future projects, and making a project while learning, I think, would give us way more experience than, say, we were just to attend a class and watch some lectures.
So if Sakit and I were able to do this again, the improvements we would make on this project, this specific project, is that we would want to make the user interface much, much better. So even though we have it, honestly, personally, we think it's pretty good right now, but if we were going to do it again, we would have reorganized everything. So on the specific page, we would have had the time schedule be much smaller and much more discrete, like in a corner, while we have the to-do section also on that side. And the time tracker, we would have a much bigger section, and just we could add more things. So like, let's say we do a specific task like chemistry, and we can add the amount of time we did to chemistry. Even though it already tracks that, we could make it much better than it already is now if we change the user interface of everything. So Sakit is gonna go for the sorry actually I'll go. So for the future applications of this project, what happens with this project is we believe that everyone across wherever they are can use this project. We seriously believe that since it's so catered to the user, you can really use it for whatever you want. Since so many people already use sticky notes, we think this is just a much better option because it also stores locally on your computer. Okay, another question that could come up is why use HTML, CS, and JavaScript? The reason we use these three is there's actually nothing much better to use when designing this. If you're looking at this, CSS makes it into what it is. The user interface was all due to CSS, and we seriously believe that no other software could have made it look as good as we think it is right now. And JavaScript just makes it easy. It's easier than other languages. It's much more easy to just connect everything together.
And the next part is, so the main reason we're doing this section is because, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we can't have a real interview. So our next question would be, what makes our project stand out from the rest? And we believe that it's the ease of use, the local storage, and the simplicity of the program. We believe that it makes it better because we try to make it so that anyone and everyone would be able to use it without any difficulty at all. We want to cater it so that anyone could be helped by this, and I think that's what makes it unique and stand out from the rest. And of course, nothing is without challenges, and in this project, we encountered lots and lots of challenges. Not lots, but difficult ones. Our main one, of course, is the fact that we had little to no experience. Oftentimes, we would spend hours upon hours on the simplest of problems, and it would just be a tremendous waste of time when, if we had, say, more experience in this, we could have done it much quicker. And we had to oftentimes go on Google, on Chrome, on websites such as Stack Overflow, and look for solutions to the problems because we didn't know them. And another problem was mainly um, mainly the code of the program. So in the code, we had to keep track of many files, and that proved difficult for us, again, as we had little to no experience.
That's all. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Yeah.